Hello again. Uh, what I have here is basically me going through a bunch of problems from 1.7, a bunch of word problems for pre-calculus. What I recommend is listen to the problem or read the problem and then pause, solve the problem, and then play the video again and see how I solve them. So the instruction is to write a mathematical expression for the quantity described verbally. Here's the first question. A number x decreased by 3 and then doubled. So if I'm going to write a number x decreased by 3 and then it's doubled, that's how I would do it. Question number 2. A salary after a 4.6% increase if the original salary is X dollars. So 4.6% increase, I want the whole salary after the increase. So I'm going to take whatever my salary was, X, and multiply it by 1.046 because I need the 1 there because it's the salary I had, and I also need to include 4.6% more. That's how I would write it. The third question is a circle is inscribed in a square. Write the area of the square as a function of the radius. So here's my square. Circle is inscribed in the square. This would be the radius. The diameter is obviously 2r. How do you find the area of a square? Area is side length squared. Well, this diameter actually is also the length of a side. So I would take 2r, that's my side length, and square it and get 4r squared as the area in terms of the radius. Fourth question I have, a square is inscribed in a circle. What is the area of the square as a function of the radius? So you have to imagine that's a square inside of a circle. That's a radius. That's another radius. So that tells us we're basically dealing with finding the area of a square that has a diagonal length of 2r. Well, there's a couple ways you could solve this. You could use Pythagorean theorem, or if you remember, the diagonal would form a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and the hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 triangle is root 2 times as big as the legs. So each leg would be 2r divided by root 2, and not very difficult math would tell us root 2r is each side length. So how do I get the area of that square? I would take the side length squared. Problem number 5. The base of an isosceles triangle is half as long as the two equal sides. Write the area of the triangle as a function of the length of the base. Here's my isosceles triangle. I would want to call the base B, because I want the area in terms of the base. So when I use the variable B, that represents the base. So I know that this portion then would be half of B, and the base of the isosceles triangle is half as long as the two equal sides. Well, that means that this side over here would be 2B. Well, now what I have is I have a right triangle where this is 1/2 B, this is 2B. I need to solve for the height. I can use Pythagorean theorem for this. So 2B squared minus 1/2 B squared will equal the hypotenuse, or the height squared, excuse me. And 4B squared minus B squared over 4 is going to be the same as 4 minus 1/4, which would be 15/4 B squared, which means the height then would equal root 15 over 2 B. And remember what the question is asking. It's asking, write the area of the triangle. Well, how do you find the area of this triangle that we started with? It's going to be 1/2 base times height. So that's going to be 1/2 base times root 15 over 2 times the base, since that is our height, which means the area we're looking for, 1/2 times root 15 over 2, B times B, combine all that, you get root 15 over 4 times B squared. That was a good problem. I liked it. Problem number 6 says Joe Perlman received a 3.5% pay decrease. His salary after the decrease was $32,810. What was his salary before the decrease? So you want to set up an equation for that. So what was his salary before the decrease? That's X. So whatever his salary was, so whatever that salary was, we took away 3.5% of it, and got 32,810. Well, if you simply take the $32,810 and divide it by 1 minus 0.035, so that's 0.965, you'll get 34,000. So problem number 8, a tire of a moving vehicle has a radius 17 inches. If the tire is making 2.6 rotations per second, find the bicycle's speed in miles per hour. So to do this problem, we need to figure out how far the bicycle would travel in an hour. So basically what we can do is we can take, since we have the radius, we need the diameter of the tire. So that would be 17 times 2 for the diameter, because the radius, the circumference is diameter times pi. So we take that times pi. We then know that the tire makes 2.6 rotations per second. So we would multiply by 2.6. The answer here would give us how far it travels per second. Multiply that by 60, we have how far it would travel in a minute. Multiply by 60 again, we have how far it would travel in an hour. Now this is all going to be in inches. We want the speed in miles per hour. So we would have to divide that answer by 12, because there's 12 inches in a foot, times 5,280, because there's 5,280 feet in a mile. Once we do that, we would get approximately 15.77 miles per hour. The next problem is a construction company builds a swimming pool with a perimeter of 52 meters. The length is 6 meters more than the width. Find the dimensions of the pool. So since we're given length and width, we know we're talking rectangle. Just imagine this to be a rectangle instead of a square. And then we know length is 6 meters more than the width. And we know that the perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So the perimeter would be 2 times w plus 6 plus 2w, which would be 2w plus 12 plus 2w, which would be 4w plus 12 for the perimeter. And we know the perimeter of the pool is 52 meters. So then 4w would equal 40. So the width would equal 10. And the length is 6 more than the width, would be 16. Next problem. Sue invested $10,000, part at 5.2% annual interest, and the balance at 7.9% annual interest. How much is invested at each rate if 1-year interest payment is $675.25? All this is saying is Sue has $10,000 to invest. Part of it's going in one account that pays 5.2%. The rest of it, or the balance, is going into another account at 7.9%. So to set this up, I'm going to take 5.2% times X amount. X is whatever I put into the 5.2% account. I'm going to add to that the 7.9% times however much was left out of the 10,000. Together that has to equal 675.25. 0.079 times 10,000 is 790. And then get the x's to one side, the numbers to the rest. You get x equals 4,250. What does that mean? That $4,250 were invested in the 5.2% account, and that leaves 5,750 invested in the 7.9% account. The next question. The speed of a freight train is 21 miles per hour slower than that of a passenger train. The freight train travels 330 miles in the same time it takes a passenger train to travel 470 miles. Find the speed of the passenger train. Okay, so what's the same in both for both trains? It's the time that they travel. So you should know that distance equals your rate times the time. Well, the time is the same in both cases. So what I'm going to do is solve for t. The time is going to equal your distance divided by your rate. Well, now I can set these equal to each other for the two different cases. The freight train is 21 miles per hour slower than the passenger train. I'm trying to find the passenger train, so I like to use x as that variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to say the distance over the rate is going to equal the distance over the rate, since the times are the same. Well, since the freight train is 21 miles per hour slower than the passenger train, that's going to be the rate. The freight train traveled 330 miles, so that's the distance. So what that means to me is the distance 330 divided by the rate of x minus 21 is going to equal the distance of 470, that's the passenger train, distance divided by the rate of x. I'm going to cross multiply. And then solve. So then get your x's on one side, your numbers on the other. X will end up equaling 70.5 miles per hour. What is that telling me? That's telling me the speed of the passenger train, that was our x variable, is 70.5 miles per hour. Next problem. In a chemistry class, 3 liters of a 4% silver iodide solution must be mixed with a 10% solution to get a 6% solution. How many liters of the 10% solution are needed? So we know we have 3 liters of a 4% solution. So we're going to take 3 times 0.04, and we're going to add to that how many liters of a 10% solution are needed. We're going to add x liters times the 10% solution, and that's got to equal a 6% solution. So 0.06 times the total amount of liquid that we have, which is going to be 3 liters plus however many liters we added. So now, again, we're just going to solve for x. So 3 times 0.04, that would be 0.12 plus 0.1x would equal 0.18 plus 0.06x. So then when you solve for x, get x all by itself, x would equal 1.5. And that is the number of liters of the 10% solution that you would need.